Hey guys, Kyo here, and this time, as you can see by the title, I got a special guest with me today. Introduce yourself.
What is up? I'm Dicehead27 from the channel Dicehead27.
Very creative intro. So I'm just gonna basically just see his top five and just discuss it. Basically, I'll either flame it or actually praise it. Depends on what he puts, especially if it's a monster. So yeah, do you want to get into your first one?
Yes, you just want me to start at number 5. So, number 5 is maybe the spot that's reserved for the one that deserves to be here the least. I don't know. It's Blackjack by Osamu Tazuka. I actually just made a video on this like last week, and honestly, this manga is probably the worst on my top 5, and my number 6 manga, currently number 6, is in my opinion honestly better than Blackjack. However, I just enjoy Blackjack a lot. I think the plot is just really fun. Every chapter really keeps me interested. Of course, for those who don't know, it's an episodic series more about kind of in the vein of an American TV show, almost about a doctor who doesn't have a license but goes around solving the most high profile cases. Listen, not all of it makes sense. There's a lot of really weird sci-fi gimmicks introduced throughout the series, but it's just really fun, and honestly, just a read that always keeps me wanting to come back, and that's why it hits top 5.
Right. I've never read like a single Tezuka work, but just because of his whole influence in the industry, I do want to read some. I actually
Yes.
thought Ashita no Joe, which is what I'm reading right now, was a Tezuka work just because of the art style. But I'll probably
Yeah,
start
it
with
is
Blackjack
similar.
if I get to a Tezuka work.
Yeah, Blackjack, Message to Adolf, Phoenix, Buddha are all very, very good ones. He has a ton of good works, a ton of not so good works, but I'm such a big Tezuka fan that I read his not so good works and still like them. So, hey, this is a biased decision, but I mean, it's my top 5, so of course it's going to be a biased decision.
I mean, I would say more, but I've never really read a Tezuka work. So do you want to
Yeah,
get to your
that's
number
fair,
four?
that's fair. Yeah, so my number 4 is something I can assume you've read. I hope so, at least. It's Berserk. So this is probably only strange because of the placement. I mean, if you've read Berserk, it makes your top 10 at least, most likely top 3. For me, it's only at number 4. This is largely because I haven't read all of it. Right now, I'm about at like the beginning of the Conviction arc, I believe. I finished the Golden Age, I can say that for sure. But it's not bad by any means. I really, really love Berserk, but I feel like I just need a little more of it before I can faithfully put it above the rest of my list. And honestly, it just hasn't given me that enjoyability yet to put it above things that are in my top 3, technically 4. But I'll get to that later. But Berserk, either way, fantastic, fantastic title, and another one that I can always return to, with one of my favorite characters ever, that of course being Griffith.
Yeah, that's understandable. Griffith is also one of my favorite characters, but I think it's just because of like how Berserk is styled, I guess. Because most like deep mangas and mangas with a lot of depth don't enter my top 5. But Berserk was always, I think the highest I got was like number 7 or 6. But
Yeah.
yeah, Golden Age was always entertaining, but I definitely found Falcon of the Millennium Empire. I don't know, I liked it more, but I would explain why, but it's basically a spoiler, so I won't. But if you didn't enjoy Golden Age as much, you'll probably enjoy Falcon of the Millennium Empire. But yeah,
Honestly, I've enjoyed everything I've seen. There's nothing that's like not enjoyable to me, but it's always just like I'm always kind of debating after I read it of like, was that the best thing I've ever read, or was it just like really good? And I'm thinking it was the best thing I've ever read because everybody says it is. It's honestly maybe part of the quote unquote hype. I always hate to use hype as a reason for not liking something as much, but since it's hyped up so much, it always makes me second guess my decisions on it, which is why it's maybe a little lower than it deserves to be. But I think honestly this is a good placement, especially considering the amount that I've read.
yeah. I think hype is the only thing that can really detract from it. Is like you hear so much about it that you might get disappointed, which is what happened to me
Yeah,
personally with Vagabond. I mean, I can see why it can be someone's favorite series, but I heard so much about
for
like
sure.
every arc that I don't know, I just didn't enjoy it as much as others. It's still a good series.
I think one of my favorite example is, and it's kind of a joke, but also like it really does apply to the entirety of the series if you think about it, is with the whole Griffith did nothing wrong thing. I had it hyped up for so long that Griffith was this horrible, horrible person, and he would do something so unimaginably wrong that when it actually happened, I was kind of like, oh, that was exactly what I was expecting. Not saying it wasn't wrong, but I was kind of just a little underwhelmed as I was expecting a lot more than what I got. Although I don't know how much farther it could have gone. Listen, from what I heard, I thought it'd be much worse, which is kind of how I feel about all of Berserk. I hear that it's the best thing ever, and I read it and I'm like, wow, that was really, really good, but is that the best thing ever? That's why it just maybe sinks a little lower than it deserves to be, but either way, again, enjoyability does play a factor, and that's why Berserk is below the rest of my list.
I can agree with that, honestly. Would you prefer Griffith or Guts, though? Because I personally prefer Griffith a lot more.
Griffith, for sure.
Yeah, because a lot of people say Guts, but I just prefer Griffith more.
I'm probably going to say Guts by the end of the series because I'm going to be spending a lot more time with him from what I've seen, but Griffith is just so well written, and he's one of those characters that like makes you just question like you when you're reading it. He's really weird to read because he's like, you love him so much even though he's doing some terrible things, and he's just really different. He's just a whole different character. He's the type of character along the lines of like a Joker or a Batman, those really complex and deep characters that you could write essays and theses on, that are, you know, massive in-depth characters, except Griffith had a lot less screen time than Batman and Joker, which is honestly why I think it's much more impressive in a lot of ways.
There isn't really much to say about Berserk that really hasn't been said, because, you know, it's such a popular series with a lot of fans, so I don't think there's like too much more we can expand on it. Do you want to get to your number three, or is there anything else you wanted to mention?
No, I'll go to one of my other three. So this is kind of weird. Number three is a tie between Poon Poon and the Flowers of Evil. Now, yes, I would put Poon Poon above the Flowers of Evil, honestly, and could kick Blackjack off my list, but I don't want to do that because I want Tazuka title on my list. And also, I feel like these series have a really good completion of one another. So, first of all, have you read Poon Poon and the Flowers of Evil?
I've read Poon Poon, but not Flowers of Evil.
Okay, so the way I would describe Flowers of Evil is Poon Poon leans into the darkness as it comes to him throughout the series, and in Flowers of Evil, Kasuga tries to run away from it. I think that's kind of the analogy I would use here. They're both very similar stories, they both have very similar themes of perversion, darkness, and just a lot of that icky stuff that you really feel dirty almost when reading it, except they're like two different sides of the same coin. It's the same story told from different perspectives and with different twists and turns, which is why I think they really belong right next to each other, and why enjoyability wise I can't say which one I like better. However, I can honestly say that Poon Poon is objectively a better series, and I'm not going to get into the whole objective and does it exist, does it not exist. I think Poon Poon, just looking at its art, looking at how the story is told, it is just a better series looking at it. However, there's still, you know, enjoyability that plays a part, and that's why they're equal here. And I honestly think it's a pretty cool reasoning, as them completing each other makes it appropriate that they're right next to each other, you know?
I think, I've never heard, I've heard a lot about Akunohana, right? There's so much to that people have said about it. I've never seen that comparison about it and Poon Poon though, so that's an interesting thing I've never heard.
Yeah, I haven't.
So I've never heard anything bad about Poon Poon either.
I haven't really heard of that example anywhere else as well. Maybe it's just me pulling stuff out of thin air to try and get good reason for them to be next to each other, but I really do feel like the series, even if you're going to denounce that comparison of them being very similar, just different ways of telling the same story, I think everybody can agree that they give off very similar vibes when reading them, and mainly how you feel when you're reading it is, maybe you didn't feel this way. I definitely didn't. I've talked to a lot of other people who did feel this way. You almost feel wrong reading Poon Poon because of some of the stuff that happens, and Flowers of Evil's very similar. In a lot of the things that happen, you feel very strange reading it, and I think since they evoke the same feeling, that's kind of why I'm making that comparison, you know?
Yeah, and Poon Poon is one of those series too, right? That it's hard to find a problem with it. My only complaint with this series is literally any chapter that contains Pegasus.
But the Pegasus, yeah.
If it wasn't for Pegasus, the series would probably be like top 7 for me easily. But
I have Poon Poon. So the whole Pegasus thing, I don't know how true this is, so don't quote me on it. But I've heard that the author needed to make it a little longer to get into the magazine, so he added that to pad out the story. And people have made comparisons about why it's actually very relevant to the story. I honestly don't see it as being relevant at all, and really found it to be some of the worst parts of the story. Either way, though, Inyo Asano is like a really, really good mangaka, so he did tell it in a fairly interesting way that did keep me wanting to read at least to get to Poon Poon maybe. But either way, yeah, you're right. That's definitely the part of the story that drags on the most.
Yeah, I don't think I've found many like people. I haven't talked to many Poon Poon fans, right? But I don't think I've seen many people who read the series who like really could give me a very solid explanation on why it's a very important part of the series or something. I just found like the chapters to be really slow and boring, especially when
only thing
they cut out.
The comparisons they see are usually saying that they have a similar character arc that's supposed to reflect Poon Poon's in some way, but I find that to be completely unnecessary because Poon Poon's character arc is the story, so what's the point of having another character arc that's supposed to be reflective of it? So I honestly think that's kind of a bad reasoning. I don't know, maybe I just don't understand it. I'm not the type to look like terribly deep into every element of a manga. Usually if I don't like something, especially, I'm not going to look that deep into it. I'm not going to keep searching and searching for those elements that probably aren't there. But either way, Poon Poon's a fantastic series, so I really don't think that the Pegasus stuff drags down too much. I mean, I honestly do get where you're coming from, though, as it did drag it down for me a lot, too.
I mean, it's a great series, right? Great art, great protagonist.
Yeah.
Would you say Poon Poon's in like your top 5 or top 10 when it comes to like protagonists?
So as far as top 5 and top 10 lists go, I really don't have many for like definitive stuff. I think though if I made a protagonist list, Poon Poon would easily make it in there. A character list, I don't know, because his character is much more broad. But yes, Poon Poon would easily make it into my top 10 protagonists.
Yeah, that's I mean, it's a really good take. I don't think anyone could get mad about Poon Poon being where it is. And Aqua.
Yes.
Do you want to get on to your number 2, or do you want to talk more about
Yep. So my number 2 is One Piece. I don't really know what to even say about One Piece. I mean, it's just fantastic from front to back. There's any flaw with One Piece is enjoyable in my opinion. Even my least favorite arcs and what's deemed as the worst arcs, I honestly still had a ton of fun reading. And One Piece is just a huge ball of fun. Yes, it's not the best series. There's many series that are better than it, but One Piece is super enjoyable. I think that the comparison I like to use is One Piece is really good. It does a lot of things very well, but since it's so enjoyable too, that really bumps it up for a lot of people, and that's why it's at number 2 for me.
I mean, yeah, One Piece is one of those series, right, that it has its little, like, tickles of, like, I don't know why I use tickles as an example, but it has its, like, little touches of depth here and there, especially in the antagonist. But it's just that much of an enjoyable series that anyone, even like an elitist who only talks about depth, could have in their top 5 at least.
Yeah, it's even. I think One Piece really, like, people will joke often using that this series is a little bit of something for everybody. No, One Piece really does have something for everybody, and yes, it's kind of because of its length, but still, man, One Piece has, if you want depth, I mean, there's villains with depth. If you want symbolism, there's villains with symbolism, and if you just want a really good time, well, the entirety of One Piece is a really, really good time.
Yeah, and also, like, I don't really talk about fandoms too much when like praising or complaining about a series, but I definitely think, unless you like completely slander the series, One Piece's fandom it's a pretty decent one too, because you know there's so much mystery about the series that there's so many like fan theories they've come up with that a lot of them are valid, right? Like the whole Blackbeard Cerberus theory.
I can say that the One Piece fandom, for the size that One Piece is very, very, very good. Usually when you have a shonen that big, like the Naruto fandom, because the fandom for that's huge, and usually when you just have a series that big in general, with a fandom that big, it's always going to be toxic. But One Piece, it's not terrible. I mean, yeah, there's its toxic moments, but I mean, every fan base does, so I wouldn't say they're terrible, but like every fan base, they do have their toxic moments.
Yeah, especially if you like attack the series, but I mean that's to be expected.
Yeah.
Fandom's gonna defend its series.
Yeah.
One Piece used to be my favorite series, but now it's around top 5, I think.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite, just out of curiosity?
Kingdom.
Kingdom. Okay, that makes sense. I still got to get around to Kingdom.
Kingdom is it's definitely my favorite series. The only series that's come close was like Magi for me. But Magi's like
Magi.
a
Okay,
special
yeah.
connection to me, so only to be
Mm-hmm.
expected.
Okay, so you want me to get on to my number one now?
Yeah, sure.
So my number one series is probably the strangest pick on this list outside of Blackjack, and that is Bakuman. Those familiar with the series probably more know it as the series that was made by the authors of Death Note than anything else. It's an interesting series, right? So Bakuman is a slice of life slash battle shonen series. I guess the way it kind of describes itself within the series, within its own arc of it's a non-battle battle shonen. It's a shonen where the fights aren't within the fights. They're not actually fighting each other, but they're still battling. Good examples of this are like Kaguya-sama Love is War, and I believe The Promised Neverland. Death Note is also a great example, being that it's from the same author as many of the similar tropes. One of my favorite parts of Bakuman is the characters. And honestly, usually I'm not the most character-driven person. Usually if they have a good storyline, I feel that everything else falls into place. But Bakuman's characters are just so enjoyable, with my favorite character of all time coming from that series, that being Eiji Nizuma. All the characters have their great moments, and by the end of the series, they can really do anything, and you'll kind of just find it funny, as even though it's kind of a short series, being only 176 chapters, they get a lot done, and you feel very, very attached to the characters. It's a wordy series, yes, that's everybody's number one complaint, but it's also a very funny series. I think that you can kind of skip over a lot of the huge text blurbs, but I've reread it a couple times, and I can say without a doubt that every time when I go back and read those, I find a new joke within them. I find them even funnier than the last time, and honestly, there's just so little, yet so much to the series. It's like less is more is kind of how I would describe this entire series. As yes, it's simple, it's kind of just a battle shonen about making manga, but it's fantastic in every regard, in my opinion.
I've never actually seen someone have Bakuman that high. I think the closest thing I've seen was like maybe top 10. It's one of those
Yeah.
series that I think is the only one on your whole list that I've heard like actually mixed feelings about. I mean, Berserk, I've seen the obvious like mid-Zerk slander, but
Yeah.
I'll do it as a joke. But most people like Berserk, but I've seen like one or two people actually dislike Bakuman. I forgot what it was for, but
Many people will dislike Bakuman because they'll say it's boring, and that really does come from the wordiness. I honestly feel like it's just as valid as people saying One Piece is long. Like, yes, it is long, yes, it's wordy, and both those things can be a barrier to entry, but I feel like once you get past that, you'll think it's boring at first, but you'll really get into the series itself. But then again, of course, a ton of biases come along with it, you know?
yeah. You said it was by the same creators as Death Note, right?
Yep.
I think that kind of like a lot of the time, like when an author will make like one hit series or maybe two hit series, and then they'll just like make some slow series, or just be the other way around, right? They make some bad series, not bad series, but not as big, and then
Yeah.
some huge series, and then they go back to something not as big. But it's pretty impressive that they could make two series that are decently big.
So, two, and probably it's gearing up to be a third, as Platinum End is a series that they've also done work on, or are directly working on. I don't know why I'm using that terminology. They directly are currently making a Platinum End. It's getting an anime. The manga is very solid, maybe not on par with Death Note and Bakuman, but Platinum End is definitely also going to do very well, I can say. So they're on their way to have 3 big hits, and from what I see.
I did eventually start. By the way, would you prefer the anime or the manga for Bakuman?
Definitely the manga. I haven't watched all of the anime, but I can say that the first episode only covers 1 chapter. It seems to be very slow, and like I said, Bakuman is wordy, meaning there's a lot of scenes where it's like the characters are just standing still, talking with a very total animation. So it's like at that point, just read the manga.
Yeah, you basically just be reading like a manga with color. So,
Yeah.
because I've heard like a few decent things about it, but I never really considered like reading it anytime soon, since I've never seen that many people like actively praise it a lot. Right? I've seen more Tokyo Revengers love in the past 2 days than I have Bakuman in its whole, since I've learned about it.
It falls under a lot of people's radars. I feel like if it was coming out now, even it wouldn't do, like, it wouldn't be super hyped up. because it's really just not a hype series. It's not a series built for hype. You never see people tweeting about the new chapter that came out because this happened. It's really just a super enjoyable series, honestly. That's how I would put it.
I mean, yeah, I think a lot of non-battle battle series, it's hard for them to like actually go trending or be really hype on
Yeah.
Twitter, but they're also like a very solid series for the most part, right? Like
Even though as somebody
Kaguya-sama.
who
Go on.
still as somebody who likes a series, you will be hyped up in certain moments, but it's not like it's not like a Dragon Ball where you can just watch any fight and get kind of hyped up. Once you're into the series, once you kind of know all the characters and understand the landscape of things, you will be hyped up.
Yeah, because like a series like Levels of War, I think it's a very consistently entertaining series, but at the same time, I don't think you'll ever see it like trending on Twitter unless it's like it finally ends or something, right?
Yeah,
So I can probably see why it's not as big of a series as, I don't know, like its originally Death Note and stuff like that. Especially
yeah,
since people really like the whole Light versus L, like two smart guys
yeah,
fighting. It's always interesting to see. And
for
plus, you don't
sure.
see that many manga about like manga, so that's
Yeah,
also another thing. Damn, some silence. But yeah, I was gonna say, do you have any honorable mentions for like your top five?
um, I mean, I guess I'll just take the chance to say some comics that do precede my top five. I know you can't really talk about comics since you're definitely just a manga channel. I do some comic stuff on my channel, so if you're interested in that, that's a good place to be because I like to do a lot of both of them. But Animal Man and Sandman and probably Watchmen. I'm in the process of rereading it. It's been a long time. That's why it wasn't on my top five. But all three of those would probably destroy my top five because they're all fantastic series.
I've literally never heard about any of those series besides Watchmen. I'm not gonna lie.
I'll have to send them over to you because they're all very fantastic series.
Would you say they're like your favorite comics, or do you have one that's better?
Sandman is, I don't know, I kind of just sent them in an order. Maybe that's their order. Sandman's easily the best thing I've ever read, like ever. You can just tell when reading it that there's so much to it. But also one of those stories that you can just read on the surface and kind of get a good experience too. Sandman, easily the best thing ever, so probably taking number one there. I am currently in the process of once again rereading it before I do a video on it. Many of the comics I've read were quite a while ago, so that's why I like to reread them more so than manga before I do videos. Animal Man, also extremely good. You'll like it a lot if you like comics a lot, but it might not be the best entry comic. And then Watchmen, everybody knows Watchmen,
Yeah, everyone's heard about it. So I'm gonna try to not have this like a 40-minute video like I almost had one time. And just not have it 25% of it just be comics. So that's probably what's gonna end the video there. Remember to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and do you have any other like parting words?
Check out my channel, I guess, if you haven't, and subscribe to Kira because he makes some great videos.
Yeah, I'll leave a link to his channel in the description. So big thanks to you for like actually participating in the video. And
No problem.
yeah, peace.